While I've mostly focused on sci-fi on this channel, I've always fancied doing some more fantasy-based content as well, and it seems a few people were keen on a video concerning Season 1 of Netflix's The Witcher. Now I should say, I went into this show as a novice at best. I've read none of the books and only played a small portion of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The universe and the concept has always interested me, but it was only after watching this show I tried delving into the other content more deeply. Now, The Witcher is certainly a handsome-looking show. The production design is sublime, from costumes to sets to monsters and all else. While it doesn't have the big screen feel of Game of Thrones or the slick direction of Star Trek Discovery, The Witcher is clearly using its budget to its maximum. Here and there you can see a few TV tricks like a propensity for reused sets or hiding the true size of large armies, and at times the VFX can be a bit shaky, but again, we as an audience have been spoiled by the blockbuster production of Game of Thrones. Despite that, however, The Witcher has some terrifically composed shots and strong overall direction. The music, like the games, also succeeds in carrying Eastern European or even Nordic stylistic flourishes. Always nice to hear a hurdy-gurdy pop up in a score. However, I do yearn for an iconic and singable Witcher theme tune, although we did kind of end up getting that in universe. When it comes to the cast, the biggest surprise was of course Henry Cavill. While I hadn't played much of the games, I was familiar enough with the Geralt character to be highly skeptical of Cavill when he was announced in the part. He just seemed too clean, too cool, and too suave to truly embody a gritty anti-hero. But in the final product, Henry Cavill is absolutely fantastic in the lead role. In retrospect, it should have been obvious. Cavill, despite looking like he was 3D printed, is a massive nerd. We've heard him talk about his love of World of Warcraft and Dungeons & Dragons before, and so it was no surprise to find out that he was a huge Witcher fan, and in fact pursued the lead role before any scripts had even been written. The physical effort he put into previous roles allows him to handle a vast majority of on-screen stunts and fights like a natural. His physical embodiment of the role is actually so strong, the writers behind the show actually removed many lines of dialogue because Cavill could simply convey the same thing through movement or facial expression. But in terms of his voice, the deep, gruff tone he speaks in carries so much gravitas and quiet charm. The way he speaks is so memorable, even his utterance of singular words has become a meme. In the end, despite my own initial skepticism and the skepticism of others, Henry Cavill as Geralt is probably the best thing about the show. While I don't think he was really given great material as Superman, his version of Geralt feels like a star-making performance. Freya Allan was also a promising young performer. While I'll get into Ciri's story arc a little later on, I think her subplot unfortunately didn't really offer much for the actress. She clearly has heaps of talent, it's just a shame the script kind of left her to fend for herself most of the time. Again, I'll get into those details a little later. Anya Chalotra was also great as Yennefer. Unlike Ciri's story, an origin story of sorts for Yennefer gave Chalotra a lot to work with. From a disfigured outcast to a rebellious sorceress, a scheming seductress, an unlikely freedom fighter, this is a hell of a lot to ask from any actor, but Chalotra absolutely nailed it. Sympathetic, sexy, charismatic, dangerous, it takes a very talented performer to impart all of these feelings on the audience at once for a single character, and Chalotra was excellent on all fronts. It also helps that she has great screen chemistry with Henry Cavill for the eventual love affair between Geralt and Yennefer. However, I think the plot progression for her actual story arc and its problems is a perfect time to talk about the story of the show. Spoiler alert if you care, but I'm going to get into details of pretty much every major event in the season, but if you're a fantasy fan who still hasn't given The Witcher a shot, please do so. Okay, here we go. Why, oh why, did we need multiple timelines to tell this story? It's just a very weird choice and doesn't really benefit the story being told. To make a very obvious comparison, we need to talk about Westworld. I suppose this is also another spoiler warning if you haven't watched Westworld, please go watch that as well, it's really good. So in Westworld Season 1, the big revelation was the twist of the Man in Black actually being the older version of William the whole time. Turns out we were watching two timelines the entire time and didn't know it. But in Westworld, that twist works because memories are a strong motif in that show, and the path to achieving sentience for the hosts is outlined as a journey inwards as opposed to the often employed pyramid model. So for Dolores to relive memories from a previous reboot, she is embarking on that inward journey, and confronting the Man in Black is a catalyst for her sentience. The twist reinforces the themes of the show and develops its characters in really interesting ways. However, in The Witcher, it mostly just causes problems. Geralt's storyline overall is easily the strongest. Monster hunting is fun as hell, and his scenes with Bard Jessica are wonderful. Many of his adventures feel entirely episodic and form almost a fantasy detective show. Each monster is cool, and the showdowns with them allow the show to stage some great action, while also offering twists and turns for numerous supporting characters. In fact, if the season was primarily episodic to start with and focused on Geralt's monster hunting, I could see this being a much more engrossing show overall. Have us get to know Geralt as a character and what his routine is like, have him bump into Yennefer during one episode and get mixed up with Sutra in another, eventually coming to a head in the climactic battle as it is in the last episode. Yennefer's storyline suffers because of the time jumps as well. We get several episodes watching her struggle from disfigured outcast to magic Beyonce, and it's really good stuff, but she goes through all this hard work and struggle to get where she wants, and yet the next time we see her, she's already disillusioned with life as a court mage and already a scheming seductress the following episode. It feels like there's chapters missing. What made Yennefer give up on being a court mage, considering it's something she fought so hard for? How did she acquire a folklore reputation as a powerful rogue witch? The earlier episodes showing her training was an awesome in-depth look at how magic in this world works and reinforced the brutality of the setting while also developing a main character. But then we skip over some very interesting developments to get to the point where she meets Geralt. It's a little bizarre. This is also why Ciri is left with very little to do most of the time. By having the fall of Sutra happen in the very first episode, Ciri is essentially left to roam around, getting almost captured, getting captured, using her power, being scared by her power, and none of it really progresses much. An actual significant development would be her finally meeting Geralt, and it happens in the last scene of the last episode. Everything the character learns could have been accomplished in one episode instead of stretched out to 8. The non-linear plotting also hurts the immersion of the world. Despite how much they're mentioned, I still don't know much about the Nilfgaard, or what they want, or the various relationships between the other kingdoms. Again, if the show started off episodic, we could have had Geralt go on a monster hunt in a different kingdom, and learn about the larger picture of the world while also watching Geralt punch demons in the face. I'm just spitballing here, but in general, I don't really see what purpose the non-linear plotting serves, and I think there was a way to make this way more streamlined. All of that being said, when told in order, this is a fine fantasy story, full of standard tropes, but also highlighting many unique features of the world. This is one of the most prevalent high magic settings I've seen get this popular in a while. Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, while featuring magic, didn't have nearly as many spells, signs, monsters, and potions as The Witcher does. But having been given a detailed look at Heavy Metal Hogwarts, it's a system which clearly establishes its rules and isn't used as a get-out-of-jail-free card for contrived writing. The elves of The Witcher not being heavenly, ethereal, light-footed archers is also a welcome change. I also generally like the idea of a magic order dishing out mages to kings and queens across the continent in an attempt to keep overall peace. The world feels lived in with a rich history like good fantasy should. As I said, all the right pieces are there, I just don't know why they were assembled in this weird order. So, did it suck? No. If you can overcome the weird structure, there's a lot of great stuff in here. I just hope now that Ciri has finally met Geralt, we don't have to go all wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey in Season 2. Right now, this is a good fantasy adventure show, but it could be a great one. FGDJ2000 asks, how old are you and what do you do for a living outside of YouTube? I am the ripe old age of 24. I'm a 90s baby if that means anything. Over the course of this channel, I've had many different jobs. I started working in a DVD shop, then worked as a labourer on a few building sites, and now I mostly do housekeeping at a hotel and some Airbnb places. I also make films and write, of course, but those things don't support me financially as yet. My ultimate plan is to make my filmmaking my main career, though. Clear Mountain asks, what are your thoughts on The Wandering Earth? For those who don't know, The Wandering Earth is this sci-fi blockbuster movie from China. It's on Netflix right now. It was a huge hit, made almost $700 million worldwide. The premise is simply ridiculous. Basically, the sun is expanding several billion years earlier than it should, and it's going to consume the solar system, so humanity builds thousands of mountain-sized engines on the planet to stop its rotation and then fly out of the solar system to a new star. That's just the backstory. The plot of the film takes place several years into this journey, where catastrophic engine failure causes the Earth to get stuck in Jupiter's gravity and spiral out of control, so a bunch of people have to run around the planet getting the engines fixed before everyone dies. It is one of the silliest sci-fi movies I've ever seen. Friend of the channel Space Doc did a great video on the movie. I honestly don't know if I liked it or not. I've been thinking about doing a video on it, but I don't know what format it would take. I do want to talk about it at some point, but I'm not sure how just yet. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but my detailed thoughts on the movie will come out at some point in the future in a different video. Hope that gives you some kind of satisfaction. Thank you for watching. If you like my videos, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on all my new uploads. Over on my Patreon, you can see videos early. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.